The Mariners' 40-man roster is now full with today's edition of right-handed pitcher Austin Voth. We'll tell you a little bit about him and talk about the collection of relief arms the Mariners have put together over the last week or so, and if that signifies, really anything coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. This is Tiding Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's LOCKEDON to get yourself started. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And on the show today, the Mariners have signed a reliever to a small major league contract. Right-hander Austin Voth on a 1-year, $1.25 million deal. Voth is one of several arms the Mariners have added in the past week to throw into their bullpen mix. We're going to discuss if this signifies, an upcoming trade of one of the team's other relievers or something of the like. But first, let's just focus in on Voth. It's a major league contract, which is a little bit surprising. The Mariners have, again, added a lot of minor league deals over the last week or so. They've made a waiver claim as well with Mauricio Oliveira. But this is a major league addition for the Mariners and Austin Voth. So, Colby, what do you think about the deal, and what do you think about Voth?
Yeah, he's an interesting arm. You went to UW. He born in Redmond, so he is a Pacific Northwest guy. So welcome back home. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a 4-pitch mix, but not the traditional 4 pitches. It's a 4-seam fastball, curveball, sweeper, technically is what it's classified as,
sure.
And a cutter. So yeah. Anyways, fastball 92 to 94, not a lot of run on it, not a lot of value out of that pitch. That's a big hang up with Voth. But he does do a couple things well, and that is spin the baseball. Both his curveball and his sweeper have plus spin rates. Curveball 17th best spin rate in baseball. So he can really spin the breaking pitches, and he can get whiffs on those pitches. And the cutter is actually pretty interesting. It's about 91 miles an hour, 89 to 91 in that range. And it's got some movement. I found some clips of, I found some clips that are on Control the Zone, the Twitter account. Mm-hmm. He strikes out Fernando Tatis with a really nasty cutter. He's not afraid to backdoor that on lefties and just clip the outside corner. So the cutter has some interesting, value to it. But yeah, despite, 2+ raw pitches, he's never put up great numbers. He was pretty useful for the 2022 Orioles in the second half when they started using him as a starter. Like I said, 2+ raw pitches, but not very consistent with him. He'll leave him in the middle of the plate at times. The fastball, again, he's not getting really any value out of that, and the cutter has been spotty. So this is a guy with good stuff, has not been consistent with his control, command, or his stuff. So it's really, at this stage of his career, he's 30 years old, I believe, 31. Mm-hmm. It's not likely that this is going to turn out much for the Mariners, but it's a 1-year deal. It is just over league minimum for a veteran. It's very, very small deal. It's easy to get out of. It's not going to prevent them from getting anybody else. I saw that whole $1 million is going to prevent them from getting player X. No, it's not. It's not, guys. It's not. Any player you can get for $15 million, you can get for $14 million. It's going to be fine. And he's just, interesting clay. You have a couple of, plus breaking balls. You have an interesting cutter. And maybe the solution is as simple as throw the sweeper and the curveball a lot more and throw the fastball a lot less. We'll see. It's an interesting arm. We say this every time. Actually, 2 rules. 2 of our rules apply here. 1, if the Mariners acquire a pitcher, you should be interested automatically. They're really good at this. And 2, there is no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. Mm-hmm. So, Voth is interesting. He certainly is. He's not the splashiest guy in the world. He wasn't even really worth us doing an emergency podcast. Like, think about that. That's
No,
how
technically this is the emergency podcast.
sure. Well, I dare you to put emergency in the title.
All right.
So Voth is interesting. He's an interesting arm. The fact that he got a major league deal, could you have gotten him on a minor league deal? Probably, maybe. But by giving him a major league deal, guaranteeing him a 40-man spot entering spring training, it's probably a deciding factor, because perhaps Voth had an opportunity to go start on a minor league deal and see if he can make a rotation or something. So he's an interesting arm, and you could see why, when you dig in a little bit, why the Mariners are going to have some interest in him. He also does have experience as both a starting pitcher and a relief pitcher, and as a swing guy. So he kind of fill a lot of roles for you too. He's an interesting arm.
Yeah, broke into the league as a starting pitcher, ended up transitioning to the bullpen in Washington back in 2021. Was exclusively a reliever in 2023 for the Orioles, but in 2022 he both started and did some relieving as well. 101.2 innings pitched that year, 17 starts for him, 797 Ks per nine, 274 walks per nine, 4.34 ERA, 4.14 FIP. And then this past year, 34 and 2/3 innings pitched, 8.83 Ks per nine, 3.89 walks per nine, 5.19 ERA, 5.10 FIP. So with that background of being able to both start and come out of the bullpen and essentially be a swingman, we've talked about that role for Anthony DeSclafani and how important that role might be for the Mariners this upcoming year. And it seemed like that role, again, was going to be filled by DeSclafani, but now with Voth, especially with the context of him being on a major league deal, do you think that this means they could end up actually flipping DeSclafani and trying to save some money on that $12 million contract?
It's certainly one of the possibilities, because, if you give Voth a $1.25 million contract and then you trade DeSclafani and eat half of his salary or whatever, you're still getting about $5 million net to your payroll. Now, DeSclafani's better than Voth, at least he has been in his career. So it's not something that's guaranteed to happen. And also, Voth, again, this is a guy who could, in theory, be like a middle relief type. So maybe it's not DeSclafani who might be on the trade block now. Maybe it's someone of the Mariners middle relief types as they look to kind of, go get that infielder thereafter. So I don't know. I don't want to say it definitely indicates that something is going to come out of this. And it doesn't. I saw this idea that like DeSclafani and both on the roster don't make any sense. It does. And by the way, Voth doesn't have to make the opening day roster. There's no guarantee of that, even though he got a major league deal. So, I wouldn't say that it's a guarantee, but I think it's definitely something that's a little easier to swallow. Trading DeSclafani, because that role is important to this Mariner team. You need that swing guy who can pitch in the rotation and give you 4, 5, 6 a couple times, a month, but can also get out some righties and stuff out of the bullpen. So it's an important role. The Mariners add depth to that role, and maybe, just maybe, it means DeSclafani is up for a trade, or maybe it means Gabe Spire is available, or Justin Topa, or Trent Thornton. I mean, who knows? But it certainly does seem like this deal could be a prelude to a bigger deal that's coming down the pipe, but it's not necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily count on it.
So we're going to talk more about that and just all the arms that the Mariners have brought in, because it's quite a few over the last week or so, and just over the course of the winter as well. They've collected a really large group of relief arms. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by both FanDuel and Ibata. All right, Sailors, the NFL regular season may be over, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can also find bets in the new Explore tab and make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. It's the best way to find popular parlays. While the Seahawks are done, Mariners baseball is almost here, folks. So is betting on Mariners baseball. But while you wait for the boys to take the field, you can still bet on the Kraken and Huskies basketball. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn, that's LOCKEDON, and make your first bet a layup. Again, that is FanDuel.com/LockedOn, LOCKEDON. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League. For many people, the new year means resolutions to save money. So stop shopping without getting anything in return. Start getting cash back on every purchase you make with Ibata. Ibata is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibata user earns $145 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibata, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over 50 million savers and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibata is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibata by using the promo code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibata app to start earning cash back, and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And as a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, like I mentioned earlier, the Mariners have added quite a few relievers, not just within the last week, but over the course of the winter. Austin Voth, Anthony Desclafani, Jackson Kowar, Carlos Vargas, Mauricio Oliveira, Cody Bolton, Joey Crable, Kirby Snead, Ty Buttrey, Jonathan Diaz, Corey Abbott. A lot of guys here, right? And some of this is just, spring training bodies, right? It's not really out of the norm. A lot of these guys have signed minor league deals, but if we're trying to project the Mariners roster right now, 26-man roster, feel pretty good about Andres Munoz, Matt Brash, Justin Topa making the team, right? So there's 3 spots there. The Mariners typically carry 8 relievers pretty much all times. I feel pretty good about Gabe Spire and Taylor Saucedo making the team. So that essentially leaves 3 spots for all those guys that I just mentioned, plus Prolander Baroa, Trent Thornton, Edward Bizzardo, Ty Adcock. Those are the other guys still on the 40-man roster. And again, Voth is making major league money, right? Desclafani is making $12 million. Desclafani is making $12 million. They just gave Trent Thornton, I think, 1.3 in arbitration, 1.2, something like that. So there's 3 guys right there. There's your final 3 spots in theory, which would close the door on Kowar, Vargas, Baroa, etc., making the team out of spring training. But I think those guys are definitely going to get a very long look to make the team. And I think at least one of those guys is probably going to make the team. So with that, seems like there's going to be an odd man out here. And maybe it's as simple as Voth or Thornton. That would seem to be the easiest way out. Or maybe it is Saucedo, maybe it is Spire. How do you think this is going to shake out, though? And now that I've kind of laid that out and laid those names out, does that make it seem more like a trade might be happening here?
First of all, you can never convince me of anything, so no. Right. Second of all,
I would never try.
Yeah, Desclafani is definitely going to make the team if he's around. Like they're not going to. So there's really 2 spots open. It's an interesting group out of that. I don't think Saucedo is actually much of a lock at all. I think he really has to earn it. Sure. I'm not quite sure. I think he's out of options though. So, we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I think they like Thornton. And speaking of spin rates, Thornton really can spin the ball as well. So that's something. He was actually pretty good last year. He gave up some big home runs, but he was actually solid for the most part. So I feel like he's, I don't want to say safe because he's not, but I feel like he's relatively, well secured. And I think this is last spot really comes down to, Voth, Spire, or sorry, not Voth, Saucedo, Baroa, maybe Coar, but we'll see. There certainly are some interesting names. Crable has some really fun, peripherals, and Butchery was in 2019. He was like one of the up and coming relief stars before, a lot of stuff happened. So there's some really interesting names here. It does make me think that they are feeling confident that if they have to trade one of their middle guys to go and, be part of a package to go get the bat they want, that they'll do it. Like, I think they've done a nice job of building up at least the Thornton, Isaiah Campbell types. And there's some upside in this group as well. So I think when you list all that out, obviously you're going to have to take options into account as we get closer to, having to make the decision of who's going to be on the opening day roster. And injuries are always going to be a big X factor here. Who's going to get hurt in spring training, if anybody? So who's going to pitch poorly? Who's going to get traded? So a lot of time to figure it out. I think the bullpen mix as it is right now, I think, like you said, Topa, Brash, Munoz, Spire, if they're all here, they're going to make the team. So is Desclafani. So really it's, Saucedo, Thornton, both. They're probably the three most likely to make it. And then Baroa, we'll see. But I mean, Baroa's stuff is hard to ignore. So is Vargas. So
is Coar.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, not exactly the numbers, but yeah, the raw stuff.
Not the numbers, but the raw stuff. Yeah, no, I'm turning myself slowly but surely into a Jackson Coar believer. So,
sure, which is ironic because that's how I started, was a Jackson Coar believer. When he,
are you implying that you're not a believer anymore?
I just want to see it. Obviously, the slider and the changeup have promise, but that's been true for 3 years and he hasn't done anything with it.
Right.
So, and that's what we talk about with both. Like, yeah, the curveball and the sweeper, he can spin it. Hasn't really led to much outside of, the second half of 2022 in his career. So there are a lot of options here, and there are a lot of guys who it's not going to be difficult to move on from. You would think in theory that the guys with the major league deals would have the edge because, everybody on a minor league deal, they could just ship to the minors and they could start them in AAA and all that stuff. And that's probably what's going to end up happening. That's the most likely scenario, but yeah, we can't rule out a trade at all. We can't rule out a trade for multiple middle relief guys. I mean, if it takes Spire and, Thornton to get a solid second baseman or whatever, then they should probably do that.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's going to be camp battles really aren't a thing as much as people want them to be, but yeah, there's
I like how they are in like football and stuff like that.
No, there's, and it's not going to be based on who performs well, like in terms of just stats. So, we'll have plenty of time to talk about spring training battles. We have to fill the February, March episodes with something, but yeah, I think, the way you look at it right now, the guys on the major league deals definitely have a major leg up, but there are some legit arms in that mix that you mentioned that are on minor league deals that could just very well be better than Thornton and Voth and all that. Like Cody Bolton, by the way, he can also spin it. Like he's got a good breaking ball. So I don't know if the Mariners are trying something new here, but the bullpen is definitely more diverse. There's a lot more sinker slider types in this year's mix, and we'll see how they want to put that together. But it's going to be fun. I'm really, there are a lot of arms I'm really excited to see this spring, and I just hope that means we get to watch any of them. But it's expensive to fly a camera crew down to Peoria for 6 weeks, so we probably won't get to see much.
All right. Yeah, of course. Moving on. To answer the question at the root of it, right, does this mean that something else is going to happen? Maybe, but the other thing that we have to keep in mind here is that relief production, notoriously volatile. So you want to cover your bases. And if you have the opportunity to add a bunch of arms and add a bunch of alternatives that you can come through, do it. And I think that's what the Mariners are doing here, right? They've added a lot of mid to low leverage guys that if they do have to trade a Taylor Saucedo or a Trent Thornton or a Gabe Spire or someone like that, they have other options to sift through. Or if one of those guys regresses or a couple of those guys regress, they have other options here. We're going to talk about a couple of other smaller items in just a moment, but first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Jase Medical. So I know we look to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we talk just for a minute about actually preparing for real life? Because I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than, for example, if a loved one of mine got sick while a supply chain issue was all that was keeping them from the life-saving medication they needed. But thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including stuff like, UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, and many others. And this stuff could happen to any of us. That's just the reality of it. So visit jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular costs. It has never been more important to be prepared than it is today. So go to jasemedical.com. Again, that is JASE medical.com, and use the promo code LOCKED ON. That's LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So before we get out of here, wanted to touch on a couple of smaller things here. First, we finally heard from Brant Brown, the Mariners' new offensive coordinator, on last night's Hot Stove Show, 710 Seattle Sports. And they talked to him a little bit about his philosophy, his thoughts on the 2024 ball club, all of that. And there's been a quote that's kind of made the rounds here. Slug is thrown, not hit. It's a very interesting way to look at things. It is far from a unique thought, right? At the end of the day, it's just take what the pitcher gives you, right? That's really what he's saying, right? Which, again, that's something that's existed for a long time. But I like the way that he worded it, and I think it gives us more of a glimpse into what his assessment of the 2023 Mariners offense is, and kind of what the approach for the 2024 Mariners offense is going to be. But to essentially, explain that quote a little bit further, it's just about basically don't chase after power. Don't try to manufacture power. Let pitchers make mistakes and then make them pay for those mistakes, but just don't try to do too much at the plate, essentially. And he really went into detail on this, saying, quote, "First and foremost, it's not what the pitcher is trying to do. It's what you are trying to do to the pitcher. Second, is there a situation that needs to get done to help us win that changes what you are trying to do? And 3, we don't know which run in the game is going to win the game. We have to understand at the end of the day is you have to know where you are at in the count. You have to understand as you get into deficit counts, the slug goes down and the chase goes up. We have to modify our intent to where we are at in the at-bat, where we are at in the game, and everything needs to be tapered towards a letter, which is a W instead of a number." So again, I think this gives us a glimpse into what his thoughts were on the 2023 Mariners offense, which is what we talked a lot about over the last, 9 months, right? Which is this team on many occasions looked like it did not have a game plan. A lot of the hitters did not look like they had a game plan, that they were just kind of vibing out at the plate, and that they weren't adapting to different counts and different situations. And that's ultimately what Brant Brown has been brought in to address, right? This is why he is the offensive coordinator, not just the hitting coach, right? He is going to, assess technical and mechanical things as well with his hitters, but for the most part, his thing is strategy, right? And I know there's been a joke about oh, he's the offensive coordinator, oh, he's up in the skybox calling plays and all that stuff, right? It's not really what it is. It's just about crafting game plans ahead of time and talking with the hitters through these situations and kind of explaining here's what we want to do on a 2-2 count as opposed to what you're doing in a 3-1 count, right? Stuff like that. And I think that's very important again, because when you look back on 2023, this team did not look disciplined whatsoever. It did not look like it really had much of a game plan, like it really had any idea of what it wanted to do. And therefore they really struggled to craft much of an identity as an offense over the course of the year. So I think Brown's going to really help that. And so hearing him speak last night seemed to give us some clarity as to what really his role is going to be with the team. Secondly, Baseball America released their top prospects list, and 4 Mariners prospects made the list. Cole Young at number 44, Harry Ford at number 51, Colt Emerson at number 52, and Las Montes at number 100. A little bit of a surprise. Colby, what do you think about Baseball America's list? Do you agree with it? What do you think about the ranking on Las Montes, especially?
I mean, I don't know. Las Montes is the 100th best prospect in baseball. I mean, cool, because I have him as like the Mariners' 9th or 10th best prospect. So,
but he's Jordan, Colby. He's Jordan.
Sure, that's totally a thing. Yeah, I have Las Montes at 10 in the Mariners system. So Baseball America and I disagree pretty hard there. I also disagree with Ford and Emerson. I think Emerson should be ahead of Ford, but it's one spot, so it's kind of hard to gripe. And even if you want Emerson ahead of Young, again, it's like 10 spots. It's kind of hard to gripe. So, yeah, personally, I think Montes is a big reach in the top 100. That is saying that you believe the bat is special because he's giving you nothing else. He's not giving you base running. He's not giving you outfield defense. Like, he's got to hit, and he's got to hit big. To be a big prospect. So, Baseball America thinks that cool, I guess. I mean, good for them. I disagree. But that's, also, I really don't like bat only prospects. I tend to look for guys who can help you in multiple ways, have multiple paths to the big leagues. That's why guys like Young and Emerson and Ford are really nice pieces because, they all can, in theory, play up the middle. They all can play, above average defense at a prime position. And they all have, hit tools. And so if they turn into, 25 home run guys, great. But they don't have to in order to help you. If Las Montes is hitting, if he gets to the big leagues and he's 240, 330, 415, like that's not really a valuable player because he's not giving you anything defensively or on the bases either. So, I know that a lot of people are really high on Laz. Again, I'm not. I would have preferred Ty Pete ahead of him. I would have preferred Gabriel Gonzalez even ahead of him. But yeah, it's a first list. Lots will happen. I think the Mariners will add 1 or 2 more throughout this year. Personally, I think that Aiden Smith is the guy who's going to really take off and surprise people. And I think that Gonzalez is probably a fringe top 100 guy. He's probably in the 150-ish range, 125, 150, somewhere in that range. So I suspect we'll see more Mariners pop up in the top one. Yeah, I suspect we'll see more guys like that and more lists. But one thing that is becoming increasingly clear is that the Mariners farm system is underrated pretty significantly. It's a really good top 10 to 15. It's only
believe didn't Pipeline release like a poll or something from people in the league?
Yeah, they pulled like one scout or one scouting director or one GM from like every team. And the Mariners were tied with 2 other teams as having the most underrated farm system. Yeah, I think they also did a similar poll and they asked for individual players. And I think Colt Emerson was named one of the 2 or 3.
He was the number 1.
Yeah,
I think he was the number 1. Yeah.
So again, the Mariners pretty good at drafting. They're pretty good at identifying who they can help. They're pretty good at developing. I mean, we can't say they're great yet because none of these guys have gotten to the big leagues. I mean, Julio, Gilbert, Kirby, Cal. So we can't say they're great yet because they've only produced 4 All-Stars in the last 4 years. But yeah, the Mariners pretty good at this. This is the second time that they've basically rebuilt the farm in Jerry DiPoto's tenure. And the first time they did it in a pure traditional rebuild sense. The second time they've done it as they've competed every year for playoff spots, and this year the American League West. So Mariners player development, pretty good. Mariners ability scouting, their ability to find talent. And keep in mind, they're not drafting in the top 10. They're drafting in the 20s. So, to me, this is just a sign that, the Mariners can trade prospects. and they could be aggressive trading prospects because they've been really successful at identifying and finding ones who can replace them. The Mariners farm system went from like number 3 to like number 20 after the Castillo trade, and now I think it's pretty solidly in that 10 area, and it's going to get better. They've added, Joseph from the international class. They're going to have another good draft. They always do. And that's not counting all the young players that have graduated that aren't eligible for a list like this, but they're really good, and they are about the age of most prospects, Julio. So the Mariners farm system's in really good shape, despite not quite having that, not having that star in it. Like there's no Julio in this. There's not even a George Kirby in this farm system, but it is a pretty darn good farm system, and there's a lot of interesting guys in it.
Yeah, and also don't forget about Johnny Farmello, the Mariners' other essentially first round pick this past year.
Mariners also linked by Joe Doyle to like an absolute physical freak who's going to be top 5 to 10 in next year's international class. So they're doing work.
Yeah, they are stockpiling talent in that farm system. All right, that is going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day. We'll see you next time. Peace.